Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier, continuing my examination of just how the Nazis consolidated their grip on power. And a big factor in this presentation, which looks at the Reichstag Fire and its implications, is luck. Because that a rogue Dutch communist, Marinus van der Lubbe, acting entirely on his own, set fire to the home of the German Parliament, was a gift to the Nazis, and they were not going to miss the opportunity it gave them. What's more, it was a non-Nazi, Ludwig Grauert, Göring's newly appointed head of the police department of the Prussian Interior Ministry, who suggested an emergency decree to give legality to the Nazi response. Communists were already being arrested, but thousands more would be before the response was over. And a law had already been presented to the Reich government before the fire by Franz Gärtner, the Minister of Justice, and another non-Nazi, and that would fit the bill nicely. It included serious restrictions on civil liberties, suspending those sections of the Weimar Constitution that protected freedom of expression, freedom of the press, as well as freedom of assembly and association. It also allowed the police to detain people indefinitely without a court order. So it was that conservatives not only supported the Nazis, but at key points led the way. However, Wilhelm Frick, as Minister of the Interior, added a crucially important clause that allowed the government rather than the president to override a state's authority, as Papen had done in Prussia in 1932. In presenting the decree to his cabinet, Hitler reminded them of their intent to destroy the communists anyway, but he made clear that their destruction would be brutal and must not be made dependent on judicial considerations. Göring then told the meeting that he had evidence linking van der Lubbe to the communist leadership, and that the communists were planning much more than the fire. Both things untrue, though he stopped short of claiming they were planning an insurrection. Papen objected to Frick's clause, but it was agreed to ask Hindenburg for the decree anyway, which he duly signed. The Decree for the Protection of People and State, or the Reichstag Fire Decree, and it became law immediately. And of course an election campaign was underway. The decree was accompanied by an intense propaganda campaign, which now claimed and provided so-called evidence that the communists were in fact planning a Bolshevik revolution. It was enough to win the support of the middle classes for the decree. It was also accompanied by unrestricted violence from the SA. Ernst Thälmann, the Communist Party leader who had stood for the presidency in 1930, was arrested. So too were the rest of the party leadership, unless they were able to flee Germany before being caught. The courts, overwhelmingly conservative, regarded all communists as dangerous, and party membership as evidence of treasonable activity. Social Democrats and Liberals were arrested too, including Reichstag delegates, supposedly immune from arrest, according to the Constitution. But it was the Communist Party and individual communists that bore the brunt of the reaction. All over Germany, the Communist Party organisation was attacked, with offices occupied, funds taken, and party officials arrested, or else beaten and even murdered. Yet the party wasn't banned. Hitler feared that would bring about a violent reaction, and the party did its best to contest the election, The Nazis felt this was ultimately in their best interests. As if they were not allowed to take part in the election, the communist vote, 5.25 million votes in the last election, might be transferred to the Social Democrats, which would considerably weaken the Nazi position in the new Reichstag. The intimidation reached new heights in the last week of campaigning. Local police were positioned at strategic points, railway stations, bridges and the like, reminding the German people that a communist uprising was a real threat, even though it wasn't. Armed SA paramilitary patrolled the streets and continued to arrest Communist Party members and Social Democrats. The two parties were unable to campaign properly. Their newspapers were banned, and even if anyone was brave enough to canvass for support, their election material was confiscated, their funds stolen. Whereas the Nazis set up loudspeakers wherever they might be useful to broadcast party leaders' speeches. German flags and swastika flags were everywhere. On election day, the SA and SS continued their patrol of the streets, making sure their visibility was turned up to maximum. Transport was organised to get people to the polling stations. All this was organised in towns large and small, in villages and rural communities across the country. And yet, the Nazi Party only polled 43.9% of the vote. The Nationalists polled 8%, so that the Nazis and Nationalists together polled 51.9% of the total vote. The Hitler-led coalition had a majority, but they were far short of the two-thirds majority needed in the Reichstag to change the constitution. The Nazis are not safe in power yet, but the decree for the protection of people and state was a very big step in their consolidation of power, as was the violence on the streets, tacitly sanctioned by the establishment, in that the law didn't do anything to protect the victims or punish the perpetrators. And it was all made possible by a stroke of luck. Thank you so much for listening, and the very best of luck with your studies. Do please give this video a thumbs up if you found it useful, and please sign up to my channel if you haven't done so already. And do please tell your friends about it too. Cheers.